Number 7. The Eiffel Tower. Imagine you're a 19th century Parisian artist. You spend your days drinking espresso, wearing a jaunty beret, and painting light hitting a haystack. Suddenly, the government decides to host the 1889 World's Fair and erects a 1,000-foot iron lattice tower right in your backyard. To you, this isn't architecture, it's a giant rusted kick in the teeth. You and your friends actually signed a manifesto calling it a gigantic black factory chimney and a hateful column of bolted sheet metal. But the city officials patted you on the head and said, "Relax, Pierre, it's only staying for 20 years. It's a temporary monument to French engineering, and then we're turning it into scrap metal for spoons." Well, it's been over 130 years, and the temporary eyesore is currently the most visited paid monument in the world. How did this happen? Pure, desperate utility. As the 20-year expiration date approached in 1909, Gustave Eiffel, who was clearly playing the long game, began cramming the tower with scientific gadgets. He turned the top into a giant weather station and, more importantly, a massive radio antenna. When the military realized they could use this oversized metal asparagus to intercept enemy radio signals and communicate with the French fleet, the tower went from embarrassing scrap heap to essential national security asset overnight. It turns out that if you want to make something permanent, you just have to make it useful for spying. The psychology here is a classic case of the mere exposure effect. Essentially, your brain is a lazy houseguest that hates anything new, but if you leave a giant metal tower in its field of vision for long enough, the brain eventually goes, "Fine, I guess this is part of the sky now," and starts finding it charming. Today, Paris wouldn't be Paris without it, which just goes to show that if you annoy people consistently for 2 decades, they'll eventually call it heritage. Number 6. Income tax. Some things in life are pitched as a short-term sacrifice for a long-term goal, like a juice cleanse or sitting through a 3-hour indie movie about a man staring at a goat. In 1799, the British government told its citizens they needed a little extra cash to fund the Napoleonic Wars. It was a temporary measure. The idea was simple. Give us a portion of your hard-earned shillings so we can stop a short Frenchman from conquering Europe. And once the cannons stop firing, you can keep all your money again. Spoilers, the war ended in 1815, but the tax didn't get the memo. It was repealed, then brought back, then repealed again, until finally the government realized that having a constant stream of free money from the public is actually quite addictive. In the United States, we did the exact same thing. The Revenue Act of 1861 was passed to fund the Civil War. It was supposed to expire, but like a stray cat you fed once, it decided your porch was its new permanent residence. Your brain is biologically wired to hate losing things, a concept called loss aversion. But governments have mastered the art of making a temporary loss feel like the new baseline. They use the foot in the door technique. They ask for something small and temporary, and once you've cognitively adjusted to the pain, they just forget to stop. Now, income tax is as much a part of the human experience as breathing or realizing you've spent 40 minutes scrolling through videos of people power washing their driveways. It's a permanent subscription service to your own country that you never actually signed up for, and the cancel button doesn't exist. Essentially, we're all still paying for cannons that rusted away 2 centuries ago. Number 5. The QWERTY Keyboard. Look down at your phone or your laptop. The top row of letters spells out QWERTY. You probably think this is the most efficient way to arrange letters, designed by geniuses to help you type "LOL, that's crazy" at light speed. You would be wrong. This layout was actually designed in 1873 specifically to slow you down. Back in the days of mechanical typewriters, if you typed too fast, the metal hammers would crash into each other and jam. It was the 19th century version of your computer freezing because you opened too many tabs of cat memes. Christopher Scholes, the inventor, looked at the alphabet and decided to separate common letter pairs like S and T so the hammers wouldn't get tangled up. It was a temporary engineering fix for a mechanical limitation that hasn't existed for 50 years. We have touchscreens now. We have haptic feedback. We could have a keyboard arranged in a circle or a giant grid of emojis, but we are still using the clunky manual labor layout from the era of top hats and cholera. Why? Because of something called path dependency. Your brain and your muscles have spent so long learning this specific, inefficient dance that the mere thought of learning a better layout like Dvorak makes your nervous system want to file for divorce. We are collectively trapped in a hostage situation with a 150-year-old design choice because the cost of retraining everyone's thumbs is higher than the benefit of actually being logical. We're basically using a horse and buggy GPS system to navigate a spaceship, and we're all just okay with it. Number 4. Daylight saving time. Twice a year, the entire world participates in a bizarre ritual of chronological gaslighting. We all collectively agree to pretend it's a different time than it actually is, resulting in a week where everyone is grumpy, car accidents spike, and your cat stares at its empty food bowl with the betrayal of 1,000 suns. This was popularized during World War I as a temporary way to save coal. The logic was that if people had more sunlight in the evening, they wouldn't turn on their lamps as much. It was an emergency energy-saving measure for a world that didn't have LED bulbs or 24-hour air conditioning. The war ended, everyone hated it, and it was largely scrapped. But then it came back during World War II, and then, like a bad fashion trend from the 80s, it just refused to die. Despite numerous studies showing that it doesn't actually save energy anymore, and actually increases heart attack risks because our circadian rhythms are delicate little flowers, we keep doing it. It's the ultimate, we've always done it this way move. Your brain loves a routine, and daylight saving time is a blunt force trauma to that routine. We've turned a temporary wartime rationing tactic into a permanent part of our global identity, mostly because lobbyists for the barbecue and golf industries realize that an extra hour of evening sun means more people buying charcoal and hitting tiny balls into holes. We are literally sacrificing our sleep and cardiovascular health so that someone can sell more hot dog buns. It's a masterpiece of human irrationality. Number 3. The Office Cubicle. If you work in an office, you probably spend 8 hours a day in a grey, fabric-lined box that feels like a prison cell designed by a minimalist. This was never supposed to be your life. In the 1960s, a designer named Robert Probst invented the Action Office. It was supposed to be a revolutionary, flexible workspace with adjustable desks and 120-degree angles that encouraged movement and collaboration. It was meant to liberate the worker from the death-by-desk culture of the 1950s. But then, the corporate world got a look at it and saw something else. A way to cram as many humans as possible into a single room while still technically giving them walls. Companies realized that if they made the walls cheap, square, and movable, they could write them off as temporary equipment rather than permanent architecture for tax purposes. The Action Office was stripped of its soul, turned into a 90-degree grey box, and mass-produced. Probst spent the rest of his life apologizing for what his invention became, calling it monolithic insanity. The psychology of the cubicle is fascinatingly bleak. It gives you the illusion of privacy without any of the actual benefits. You can hear your coworker Jerry eating his yogurt with aggressive enthusiasm, but you can't see him, creating a state of perpetual low-grade paranoia. It was a temporary design experiment that turned into a permanent architectural metaphor for the crushing weight of middle management. Your workspace is basically a tax loophole you can sit in. Number 2. The temporary sales tax. Back in 1932, Mississippi was in a bit of a financial pickle. The Great Depression was hitting hard, and the state's coffers were as empty as a theater during a mime performance. The governor proposed a 2% sales tax. It was a radical, temporary emergency measure to keep the lights on until the economy bounced back. The citizens were understandably skeptical, but they were told it was just a quick fix. Fast forward nearly a century, and not only does Mississippi still have a sales tax, but almost every other state in the US decided to join the party. What was supposed to be a break glass in case of emergency fire extinguisher became the permanent plumbing of the state's economy. This is a classic example of creeping normality. When a burden is introduced during a crisis, your brain categorizes it as survival mode, but once the crisis passes, your brain, and more importantly, the government's budget has already integrated that burden into its definition of normal. Now, we don't even think about it. You see a price tag for $9.99, and your brain automatically does the sad math to realize it's actually going to cost you $11. We've accepted that a portion of every Snickers bar and pair of socks we buy goes to the state, all because of a temporary budget shortfall during the era of black and white photos and dust bowls. It turns out temporary is just government speak for until the heat death of the universe. Number 1. The London Eye. In the late 90s, London decided it needed something big to celebrate the year 2000. They built a massive observation wheel on the south bank of the River Thames. It was called the Millennium Wheel, and the planning permission was strictly temporary, 5 years only. It was essentially a giant high-tech carnival ride that was supposed to be dismantled and moved elsewhere or sold for parts by 2005. It was a glorified pop-up shop for tourists. But a funny thing happens when you build a 443-foot-tall bicycle wheel in the middle of a historic skyline. People start using it as a landmark. It became so popular and so profitable that the idea of taking it down started to seem like insanity. In 2003, the operators applied for permanent status, and the city basically said, yeah, okay, we can't imagine the river without the giant eyeball anymore. This is a perfect display of the endowment effect. Once we feel like we own something in our environment, its value skyrockets in our minds. We become emotionally attached to the giant spinning wheel because it's our giant spinning wheel. What was meant to be a fleeting celebration of a new century became a permanent fixture of the British identity. It's a testament to the fact that if you build something big enough and shiny enough, you can bypass any expiration date. It's not an observation wheel anymore. It's a permanent reminder that in the world of urban planning, temporary is just a polite way of saying, we're testing this out to see if you'll protest, and if you don't, it's staying forever.